Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Christina Strassfield and I'm the Museum Director and Chief Curator. I'd like to welcome you here today to Guildhall for our presentation this afternoon with Connie Fox and Gail Levin. But before we start our presentation, I would like to make a few announcements. I would like to thank Stephanie DeTroy Miller, who is the Curatorial Assistant and Registrar, for curating the William Heppenheimer Show. William was the 2014 winner of the Artist Members Exhibition, and he was chosen by Robert Storr, from the Dean of Yale University at the time. I'd also like to thank Joan Kreisky for curating the Michael Kanigian exhibition. And we wanted to make the announcement if we could please have no flash here in the theater as well as in the galleries. I hope that you all had a chance to pick up the wonderful little invitation, because there are a number of wonderful programs that are going to be going along with all three exhibitions. Connie and Gail will have a conversation, and then what we will do is we will open it up for questions, and then we welcome you all to enter into the galleries to see the exhibition and to participate. There are catalogs for sale in the gift shop, and we hope that you enjoy today's presentation. Without further ado, Connie and Gail.
Thank you so much for turning out. I have to say that you're all very clever, because this event wasn't on the invitation. So it means you either read the newspaper, Facebook, or you got email. Thank you for turning out to celebrate Connie Fox and William King, an artist couple, opening today. And well, I'm very pleased myself. I want to, first of all, thank Alex and Carol Rosenberg, at whose home, at a casual dinner party, somehow the germ, the seed for this show was planted, and they gave the seed money that got it off the ground. So I'm very happy to see them here today. I would very much like to thank Christina Strassfield and Stephanie Miller, the director of the gallery and the curator, who helped with so many different things to make everything that you'll see today possible. And also especially very happy about the arrival of Andrea Grover, the new director, who already had a relationship with Connie Fox from the neighboring museum. And I think on the wall you'll see that there is a photograph of Connie and Bill. You might not recognize them because Bill is wearing a dress that he got from LBIS and a wig, and Connie is in a man's suit and a fedora hat. But I think that was for a party at the parish. So this is a very friendly East End of Long Island event. And I think Connie wanted me to start with giving her the floor, and I think she has some things she wants to say, or maybe she's going to give me a tough question, I don't know. Connie?
Not tough, long. There's a very specific premise for this show, and I don't think you would know it until you read the catalog. And because of this, I want to have Gail give us some overview of what the premise is, because it is very interesting, and I must say when I first heard it, I had a little question in my mind. I mean, really? Now I'm totally won over. So, please.
Well, thanks, Connie. That's a great vote of confidence. When I first came to East Hampton, and that would be 1989, that is when I first moved out here and started living part of the year out here, one of the first couples, some of the first people that I met were Connie Fox and Bill King. And together with my husband, John Van Sickle, who's here, and thanks for his help in editing the catalog. But together we got to know Connie and Bill, as did so many people. They were really a fixture of East Hampton. And thinking back many years to the early 80s, because I first came out here at the invitation of Lee Krasner, whose biography I later wrote, but I met her when I was 21 and interviewed her for my dissertation. And in the early 80s, Barbara Rose, the art historian, organized a show at Guildhall called Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock, A Working Relationship. And that show traveled to New York, to NYU, and Lee asked me to speak about her work in a symposium there. So that investigation of an artist couple was very important in my understanding Lee Krasner, and I thought it would be very interesting to have another such show at Guildhall, and so that's kind of how it came about. And I mentioned that you can read about Ladies Village Improvement Society on the wall labels. There are a lot of labels, mostly coming out of the catalog or Morgan's Dice. And you'll see that there is a section of artist couples, or not of couples. It starts out with Prisoner of Love, and then Marry Me, when there's a Bill King-like figure proposing to an airplane with the head of a woman. And a little bit further on is a portrait that Bill did of himself and Connie in their swimsuits getting ready to go to Sammy's Beach, and her paintings are around the corner. Bill's swimmer from the Guildhall collection is swimming right into Connie's Sammy's Beach paintings. But in that couples area, you'll see not only local artist couples like Joan Simmel and the late John Hardy, and you'll find April Bornick and Eric Fischel. You might not recognize Eric because he's there with a hunting rifle and he's caught a rabbit, and I don't know if Eric has ever held a gun, and I know he's not a hunter, but you might recognize April's red hair. But next in that same area is a sculpture of another couple, Mantis Man and Laser Lady. I'll let you read the label to find out why it has that title, but let me tell you what it's made out of. It's carved and cut and put together out of the shingles that are on so many, the cedar shake shingles on so many East Hampton houses. So this is really an exhibition not only about an artist couple, but about the coupledom and presence in the East Hampton community. So in another corner, Bill is sculpting himself in many different guises. In another corner, you'll see that he does his self. In one corner, his self is Barbara Hepworth. The other corner, his self is Cindy Sherman, and she's local. Well, anyway, of course, we could get into what those come out of. The exhibition, though, is a dialogue also about art between Connie and Bill. You'll see that when Bill got together with Connie, his interest in Duchamp, which was a big passion of hers, went way up. And there is actually a sculpture called Duchamp by Bill in the exhibition across from some of Connie's paintings that reference Duchamp. Such as there's the star tonsure that Duchamp had shaved in the back of his head to be photographed by Man Ray. Connie is painting it. You don't have to be it's called Marcel's Star. You don't have to be a star to be in my show, baby. So all these little things are going on, but you don't have to read the labels. You can just go and enjoy the paintings and enjoy the sculpture. Kids will like it too. There are airplanes and ballerinas, and although the ballerina's Bill, all kinds of things to see. So you can enjoy the show on many different levels. So, Connie, did that pretty much answer your question? Okay, so I'd like to now ask you some things. In one corner, I've got two of Bill's sculptures called Talent and Debut, and they're both playing violins, or fills, as you might call them. And I think of those two sculptures by Bill, one is very tall and one is much shorter, as representing the two of you. But could you talk about, is it true you and Bill played your fiddles, your violins together in several different places in and around East Hampton? Can you tell us about you, Bill, and music?
I'm laughing because I thought about when we used to go to the Elaine Benson Gallery for openings, and we would, without being asked, we took these two fiddles, and believe me, we were not that good. We had a lot of enthusiasm for what we were doing, and at this particular opening, we were really having a good time, and so we were strolling around with our violins, just playing whatever we wanted to. And Jimmy Ernst was having a show in one of those back sections, And so we walked over there and were playing, and he called Ellen Benson over and said to her, "Get them out of here, they're ruining sales." And we also would just, go to other places and play. And we even had a fantasy of going over to Europe, and which, believe me, would have been ridiculous. And of course, we never acted on it. But it's just that we had a lot of plans that may not have worked out, but that doesn't matter. It was fun making them.
So now, did you play with some of the other artists in the East Hampton community?
Well, we started out, I think, playing in Audrey Flack's bluegrass band.
I think she called it, at that time, the Art Attacks.
The Art Attacks.
Oh, and I have forgotten to mention, and I think Levin Chesky might not be here, but he's here in spirit because he created a fantastically wonderful video just for the show of Connie and Bill, his grandparents. It's really wonderful, but it's part of a very large video program covering many years, and in Levin Chesky's video, you will see Connie and Bill playing their instruments together. Bill not only fiddle, but also accordion in one time. And you'll see them in Audrey Flack's band, back when Audrey was a blonde, Audrey. So that's another really important aspect of the exhibition that I forgot to mention. And both of Connie's, Megan and Scott Chesky are right here in the front row. I should thank also their daughter Rowena, whose record photographs from the estate were the first thing I could look at to kind of plan this exhibition. So, okay. Well, Connie, another thing that you and Bill really seem to share, as I got to know both of you, is a sense of humor and a love of jest. Did you discover that right off the bat when you met each other? And can you comment on that?
Well, that I don't remember as when we first found that out about each other, but it was so evident in our conversation that it was just natural. We didn't even think about it. This is the way people are. And early on, Bill, along with Fraser Doherty, started LTV. And this was a very important venue for recording artists in the community, and we really like doing this together. This was really in the 80s when the video cameras weighed a ton, and we would go to art studios and record them and interview them at LTV. And so we put together quite an interesting compendium of all that I've been telling you, just to record all the things that were happening then. And so all those archives are in LTV. And I'm so happy that we did that, and that they're there, and that they show how different things were then from what they are now, and how there was a real community of artists. We did one sort of, I don't know what you call it, a daisy chain, and which we started out interviewing an artist, and that artist would review another artist, and so on down the line. And this was producing really interesting results. And then somebody interviewed Hedda Stern, and she just didn't want to interview anybody. So that was the end of the daisy chain.
Connie, one of the things that I was very interested in studying your work closely and Bill's work is that you both had a real engagement with the European modern artists, especially of the first half of the 20th century. I mean, I'm thinking people like Kandinsky and Klee, and in Bill's case, Nadelman, whom he discovered when he was still a student, Elie Nadelman, Picasso. We mentioned Barbara Hepworth. And you also traveled to Europe on your own, and also later with Bill. So could you talk about your experience a little bit going to Europe, or your experiences going to Europe, and if you want, your engagement with some of these European modern masters?
Well, I was born in a very small town in Colorado, 1,000 people. And there's still 1,000 people. And
Fowler, right?
And so I knew very little about, what artists were doing, and it was a while before I learned much about it. And one of my introductions was later on. After that, I was getting a so-called advanced degree at the University of New Mexico. And Elaine de Kooning came to teach. And it was like, the doors opened up. Of course, she was, like at that point, a real proponent of abstract expressionism. And a lot of our friendship was investigation of things that we were both interested in. And it was fascinating to me that because she grew up in Brooklyn and was in the, really knew the New York art world, and hear me, in this small place, and it was just how much we understood about what was going on without, in my opinion, my knowing a lot of the facts of what was going on. So the way things unfolded for me was fascinating in the way that it was just not presented to me all at once. And I took a trip to Europe with two friends from art school. This was right after the war, in 1950. You know, I can't imagine my parents letting me go. Things were different there then. I mean, they felt that I was really old enough to know what I was doing, which of course was not the truth. But we traveled by bicycle across a good part of Europe and looking at art on the way. And as far as really seeing much contemporary art, maybe there wasn't that much, but there was just enough that really opened up my mind to the sort of the vast, I don't even know what to call it, but information that you could bring in just through your emotions. So there was a real education for me in doing this, as well as speaking to my sense of adventure, which has always been with me.
So that was the first trip to Europe. Did you and Bill go to Europe together?
Yeah, we went several times to Paris, and that's where we, really wanted to go, and felt that there was a lot of life that we were interested in, but we never really traveled broadly, so to speak.
Well, I posted this show on Facebook, and I've forgotten the guy's name, but somebody remembered you and Bill from being around 1990 at the Jurassic Artist Foundation in California.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and said that Bill left his sculptures all around the place.
Right.
Do you remember being out there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we went together, which was, I couldn't imagine either one of us being very interested in an artist community, and it was for quite a while. It was 3 weeks or a month. And one of the interesting things about it was just the landscape. There were a lot of trees. I liked painting them, and Bill, really liked making sculpture out of wood that was lying around, or pieces of trees and so forth, and he just left them. Which, thank goodness, he didn't want to bring them all home. But the closeness of being in a different landscape, so that everything was kind of fresh, was very stimulating to me. And I started doing paintings that were bigger and more complicated than I had before.
So that was in Northern California, I think somewhere south of San Francisco. But after you graduated from University of Colorado in Boulder, you went to an art school right in Los Angeles for a few months. And
2 years.
Well, not quite. I've actually got your records, remember?
Tell me more, maybe you're
Well, this is the moment when you are taking all these basic courses, but the art school, the art studio school, or whatever it's called in Los Angeles, was aiming people to be more commercial artists and designers, and I think that's why you left. But it was at that time that you discovered certain modern artists, because I'll tell you this, snooping around in Connie's past has been so rewarding. I don't know too many artists, man or woman, who have various people whom thought about marrying them, but it didn't work out, who wrote books about them. I almost married Connie Fox, who taught me blah, blah, blah. Well, Wayne Anderson, the art historian, is one of those men. And he wrote a lot of books on art history, and in his memoir, I think called Self, he's owing it all to Connie, to his total change. I think didn't you tell me he was working as a for a veterinarian when you met him? And you motivated him to go into art. So I think that's the moment when the Copley Gallery opens and this. So who are the artists? Do you remember the artists you discovered in that time?
Well, the surrealist, it was really like suddenly a window opened, all these doors open. And so surrealism was, just a love of mine. And of course, very much it gets into my work. Very much. But just hold on 1 minute. I went to Art Center School.
That's the name of it, yeah.
All right, but I went there for 2 years.
Well, we'll have to get the registrars to correct the record. Well, it was actually 3 semesters, so it is 2 years.
All these, but I had such a strong basic training. I had to learn how to, I not had to, but they really taught us how to draw without being artistic about it. Well, just for example, in a drawing class, they brought in a baseball player, and he had a bat over his shoulders, and so, they took off his hat, and they still kept the baseball, a bat. And then they kept taking things off till here he was nude, standing with the baseball. And believe me, after you go through all of that, you really know how the human body is put together.
Well, it's interesting, speaking of human bodies, how you depicted your own. Say in 1955, you did Self. You want to talk about it?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Self-portrait as Flower in 55.
Oh.
That's pretty unusual.
Yeah, it was. I get ideas. I can't really say how or where or why. It's just an idea comes to me, and I have to carry it out. About all I can say.
So I wondered if it was something about flowers, because then you have the wonderful painting in the exhibition called The Flower Lives from the 60s. So it's about 5 or 6 years later, which has this face, could be you, in this collaged in the center. And then you also did a Sarah Bernhardt flower. And I'm just wondering if I can...
you really did your research.
Well, it's possible you don't remember anymore, but I did notice, Megan is right here, when you did that, weren't you born in early 56? Yeah, so this Self as Flower that Connie did, it's at the moment when you were pregnant with Megan that you depict yourself as a flower, which is, of course, the reproductive organ of the plant world. And there you were producing, well, Megan. Don't mind me here, Kay.
So what's the question?
is your sense of jest and humor. And also, you're now an abstract painter, but when I'm looking at your big abstract paintings, I felt that you were giving the audience, the viewers, clues. And for example, in the exhibition, there's that painting 2x4. And it's got, you're all gonna see it momentarily, but it's got an obelisk in blue that reminds you of the top of the Washington Monument, you know? And we all know that that's a kind of symbol, and it's not female. And then at the bottom of the painting is a colorful rainbow kind of round disc, which looked to me like Robert Delaney's The First Disc from 1913, a very famous modern painting, which Sonia, his wife and close partner, then repaints in her big painting, Electric Prisms, the very next year. And and then in the home show, which we have part of your rugs from the Varied Gallery, we have a picture on the wall because I didn't really want to, take your home apart, but you painted a cupboard very much like with a kind of Sonia Delaney abstract pattern. Did you have any feeling for Sonia Delaney or Robert Delaney as artists?
Oh, yeah, when I first saw their work, it just really struck me. And again, I don't know why, but it just resonated so much. And that particular cupboard, let's go back just a little bit and say that, when was it, 1989?
Yes.
That Ruth Barrett asked Bill and I in December to do a home show together. And, it's something we hadn't done before, and we were both interested in doing new things. So we said yes, and this was for June. And along about March, we said, well, let's talk about what we're going to do. And we started talking about it, and we tried out this idea, another idea. And after about 15 minutes, we knew we were not going to be able to work together on this. So we took our own individual directions. But this opened up, sort of, it gave us an open door to something we hadn't even thought about, which was building all these different kinds of things, or painting them, or whatever. So we did go through with the idea of the home show, and I think this is, but as I've said before, just things that leads me into new pathways that I might not have taken are very valuable to me. So this is one of those things that I think happened. And I think it's worth mentioning because there are a number of things that are hanging in this show. And one of them, there are two big pieces on that center section as you go in on the left, which are, you might not know this unless you read the label, is that they are rugs and they were made to be put on the floor. And during the show, I had these rugs on the floor, so everybody that came in for the opening walked on the rugs, and they just survived beautifully. So as a rug, it turned out fine. And then later...
Now I have them hanging on the wall as if they're rare rugs from Orient. So that was really the only time you and Bill collaborated on a specific exhibition.
That's right, and as I said, we couldn't collaborate, we just did our own individual things. And I think are those two chairs that he made?
There are two pairs of Bill's chairs. One of them are just black, and they're with the black and white rug you did, and the others are called Kiss Me and Me Too. And that's a pair of chairs that are really kind of sculptures more than they are seatable chairs. But I'm not sure. Oh, by the way, the video program has some footage from the home show, and I do want to thank Jeannie Henderson, the archivist of LTV, who dug up all this archival footage so that we do have at least a view of the home show. There's a giant red column. I don't think it really fully survived by you, Connie. Well, do you remember the purpose of that? It's kind of like a sentinel.
Yeah, there were so many things that we each did we wouldn't have done. And for me, that tall column that didn't lead anywhere, it wasn't holding up anything, had that symbolism. What can I say? Do you know what it was? Very interesting to me. Something that's symbolic of another thing that really doesn't exist in the real world. A lot of my paintings about that.
That's interesting. Now, also in the home show section of this exhibition are 4 of your ceramic plates. You want to talk about that? To me, those are the most abstract expressionist works you've ever made. But you didn't really think of yourself ever as an abstract expressionist, did you? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, of course, when I first saw abstract expressionism, as a matter of fact, I was on my way to Europe one time, and I saw one of de Kooning's very first shows, and that to me was very revealing. But I never really wanted to be an abstract expressionist. It just didn't seem to be, in that realm. So I was more drawn to the surreal.
And did you think of your interest in Duchamp? Do you group him with the Surrealist? I mean, he's a Dadaist and Surrealist.
What's the question?
Marcel Duchamp, whom I know you, do you group him together with the Surrealist, or do you think of him as sort of the earlier wave of Dadaism?
Oh, I think one thing I like about him is the fact that he crosses over. You can't really put him in a category. And he, of course, very early on came to the United States. And there, like the myth that he did this work, and they were combined objects that were, without meaning, so to speak, except for their own meaning. And it's just that the meaning that came through to me with those works was just very important.
I found so fascinating in the middle of my doing this project, through the mail comes a notebook, kind of sketchbook, notebook, from Connie's past, starting in the 1950s and going up to the 1960s, that had been left with a friend of hers, and the friend is passed, and her daughter found it and made it her business to get it to Connie. And in that journal, you were writing in the 1950s about Duchamp and perception of the audience perception of the artist. And I thought that was very interesting.
I think this is so remarkable. I still can't quite figure it out, because here was somebody, the daughter of this friend that I haven't heard of or, knew anything about, or not in communication for decades. And these notebooks, which were, I've always kept journals, and they had very specific information about what I was thinking, and also about my interest in surrealism. So to have this is very mysterious. He's arrived in the mail, and here was all this information written down that I didn't even remember, and from these journals.
You know what I thought was incredible? You were copying down passages from different artists whose writing interested you, and you had passages from Paul Klee's on painting. But that wasn't the reason that I was so interested. When I went back to your college magazine, where you were the art editor of The Window, you wrote an entire article on Paul Klee in the 1940s.
Well, see, I didn't remember that, so I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for doing it. But it seems that I pinned it down that there was some show, you were reviewing a show of Paul Klee, which was at an early prefiguration of the Denver Art Museum and had a different name. And evidently you traveled from Boulder to Denver to look at a modern artist.
Right, it's true.
So I would say that as an undergraduate, since I teach a lot of undergraduates, you were highly motivated. You were designing drawings for the college art magazine, and I want to show just everyone the catalog, and I want to thank Pam Williams for producing it, responsible for the design. But in it, it's not in the exhibition, but you'll see a full page devoted to Connie Fox's painting, which is really quite remarkable, and is very much about wartime in the United States and how it felt on a co-ed campus without very many men. So she shows them in the top, a guy on campus, and on the bottom, they're in the European theater conducting the war. And she actually, so this got a full page in her yearbook, her junior year. She says the past year has shown effects of war, peace, and post-war confusion on our campus. For all students, especially returning veterans, college life has become a giant jigsaw puzzle of fitting in the behavior patterns of war into those of peace. And so it goes on, but you get the idea. And her painting has an under pattern of a jigsaw puzzle. So the abstract in you, Connie, was already coming out.
Well, thank you for going into that.
I just want to ask you to talk a little bit about your parents, and especially your father, because they treated you rather independently for a young woman, no?
Very definitely. I had an older brother, and my father never treated us any differently. If he would go out, would ever like doing, but I went along because it was him. Say if he went out on a hunting trip to look for rabbits and so forth, he would just take me. And many other things too. And just to get to my mother, who was a very strong influence on me, she was painting anything she wanted to, and because she was Mrs. Fox, she could do anything. And it wasn't saying, well, what's this woman doing? I can't even understand it. It was fine. Whatever she did was good. So one of the things that she did was begin to paint on the wall of the living room. And there were plants at the bottom, and then they grew. I'd come back from college, and here the plants would have grown, you know, about 2 or 3 feet up the wall of the living room. And she just tried all these things with no, you know, thought of what it was like to really be a painter. So that had a big effect on me.
Very interesting. Connie, shall we open? We have a few minutes to take questions from the audience. If you have a question for Connie or me, raise your hand, and we have a mic down there. I think Christina's down there somewhere with the mic.
Can I say just one thing
yes,
before we close it? Because I specifically asked my daughter, who's been in New Mexico, and this is where she and her brother grew up, to bring me back some cottonwood leaves. And those cottonwood trees were very important to me. And so what I'm getting to, this is a kind of artifact that I will use somehow. It won't be obvious, but I'll use it somehow in a painting because of the meaning that it brings, which I like the idea of taking meaning from something that's literal and taking it someplace else.
So anyone with a question?
Can I say something from here?
Yeah, good.
Connie, I really, really appreciate what you said about the show that we had, because sometimes you think it's funky stuff and you don't think that really affects the artist to that degree that they start doing something else. And you know, when you mention it, you really fill me with pride, and I thank you.
That was Ruth Cal from Verret Gallery speaking, who had the idea for the home show, which we commemorate in this exhibition. Thank you, Ruth.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, go ahead. Want to come to the mic?
My question is this specifically. When you do your art, the thoughts and questions that came during this interview, are they real for you, or is it just your interpretation of what it is you think her art was really about? So the question is simply, it's to you, Connie. When she suggested things, were they real for you, or were they really just her thoughts?
For example, when I found Sonia Delaney, what did you tell me? You said, how did you know? And you said, I love the fact that Sonia and Robert Delaney were a couple.
This is an interesting question, and it's very hard to answer it because I think it was both ways. No, I can't. I suggested things to her, I think, in certain ways. She suggested things to me. So that's about all I can say.
We had a dialogue, and maybe both of us made some discoveries, do you think?
Was there preparation for today's talk, or it's very spontaneous?
No, but we've been talking about these things for years now.
Okay.
3 years.
Great. very heartwarming to see how you are able to recall and be so delightful about the whole thing. It's just a charm. You're so charming and wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else?
Connie, it's Joe. Connie, I love what you just said about the cottonwood leaves that you made with. And it made me think that maybe all your paintings are autobiographical in some way. And then I thought how interesting it would be to look at them from that viewpoint, from a sort of like diarist kind of viewpoint. But also, it just suggested to me that everybody's paintings and everybody's art is a kind of a reflection on their interior life. And I just, found it interesting, a new way to look at almost all of it, So, thank you. I think that was a great thought.
Well, I think what you just said is absolutely true.
Actually, there's a quote from Bill, who couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but on the wall of the exhibition and in the catalog, something to the effect that all artist work is somewhat autobiographical. But I do think that Connie's work is very complex and can be read on many different levels. Autobiography is just one of them. But I find Connie's paintings, they're abstract, but they're full of content, at least to me.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So maybe we should end it on this.